Inhuman, Part 1, Chapter 1. The Halcyons. The Halcyons scoured the burning ruins. Charred bodies littered the ground. They spared no one, not a single soul in the small town. They had little choice in the matter. Not far from the ruins, an unholy amalgamation of flesh roiled and raged. As the dark-clad warriors rained lead and flame on its form, it was the size of a small castle, and it lashed out in rage. It rained spikes of bone and burning bile all over the field. But the Halcyons were undeterred. Their grim duty shall be done, as it always had been, as it always will be. The captain dragged the leader of the community into the open and forced him to look at the object of his worship. The man screamed as his mind was shattered by the revelation. The monstrosity had 1,000 eyes and 1,000 mouths, for it was no single child of Mother Nature, but an obscene fusion of many. Humans, aliens, even animals. Their flesh melted and locked together in eternal bliss and endless agony. And there was something more, something worse, a vast and dark presence that animated the rotting yet living flesh. The captain put a bullet through the man's skull and burned his body. The final anchor tethering the vile intelligence to the world had been severed. The creature was only physical now, and the Halcyons finished the job. Not far from the battle, a nuclear reactor was sabotaged, and it was detonated soon after the dark-clad warriors left the scene. The cold soldiers of the secret war knew how to cover their tracks. Chapter 2. The Exiled Princess. Rachel Wilkins was in trouble again. The carefree teenager was the most popular girl in her high school, and her family was part of the social elite of her homeworld, so she very rarely heard the phrase, "no." Her escapades started small, but the older she grew, the bolder she became. Her parents tolerated her antics for long. They were loving parents, but also very busy people, so they let Rachel get away with pretty much anything but murder. However, a few months before her 18th birthday, she crossed a line. The youngster got drunk with her friends, stole a shuttle on a dare, and crashed it into a family home. Thankfully, the owners were away, and Rachel herself only suffered a few bruises, but her folks knew they had to intervene. The cousin of Stephen Wilkins, Peter, lived a few star systems away. He was part of a small rural community that shunned modern technology. This little moon was chosen to be the place of Rachel's exile. She did not take kindly to this. She had a meltdown.
No one was injured,
she screamed. But to no avail. This time not even her parents would look the other way. Her eyes were red and puffy from crying, and she fell asleep on the way. In her dream, she saw herself pass by a gas giant and arrive at the little moon. She saw a village and the diligent people who dwelled there. The laughter of the children, the barking of faithful dogs, the reeds dancing in the warm glow of the sun. And she saw a nameless horror, whose oily tendrils tainted all the living beings, and it reached towards the stars in a deep and gnawing hunger.
"Rachel! Rachel! Rachel!"
her father had to yell. She woke from her slumber, caked in cold sweat.
"Dad, please, I don't want to go there."
It wasn't a tantrum this time. She was terrified, but her father did not recognize the difference.
"We are already here. And listen to me, young lady, and listen well. Cousin Peter was kind enough to accept you into his home, and I don't want to hear a single complaint. Not from you, and especially not about you. We allowed things to get out of control, but it ends today. Time away from your so-called friends and social media, and all that crap will be good for you. And some hard work will help you understand how easy you have had so far."
He spat, his brown eyes glinting with fury, but he already softened up a bit.
"Look, honey, I know we often had our priorities wrong. Your mum and I worked hard for our family, and we thought that by providing you with all you want, we thought it was enough. We forgot that what you needed the most was our time and attention."
He bit down on his lower lip and ran his right hand over his short brown hair.
"We can't take it back, but we can change going forward. I already gave my notice, and your mom will also look for a new job closer to home. You will repeat your final year of high school, but we will be there for you this time. We need a few months to set up everything, but after that, we will turn a new page."
Stephen caressed his daughter's face, pushing her blonde locks to the side.
"Besides, it will be super fun if you go into it with an open mind. I spent a summer at your great-grandfather's place. It was a lot like this one, and it was the best summer of my teenage years.
Rachel barely heard her father's voice. The nightmare of that dark horror still filled her mind. Strange dreams were perfectly normal during interstellar travel, but this felt all too real.
Daddy, enough, sweetie. It is done.
He hugged her and went to greet his cousin. The round face of Cousin Peter lit up as he noticed Rachel. He had rusty red hair and a matching beard, and always wore a smile that promised mischief. Chapter 3. A regular day at work. The captain charged with purpose. His nose was filled with the smell of the rotting ground and dying trees that no longer dreamed of a new spring. He slit a throat, and his comrade burned the body. He prowled ahead and chanced upon a small child. Even though the village was caked in blood and gore and substances too foul to describe, the kid and his clothes were spotless. He wept inconsolably, and it seemed as if he looked at the man.
Please, mister.
He begged, pleaded to the warrior. The Halcyon moved closer to the kid, but the kid's eyes did not follow the movement. His blonde locks were all over the place, and his cheeks were bright red from crying, yet no tears streaked his face.
Please, mister. I just want my mommy.
He knelt beside the child. He did not see the large kitchen knife behind the toddler's back.
I would love to help you, buddy, but there is a little problem.
His voice was dull and monotone, a colorless tone of factuality.
What?
The child sobbed.
Your mouth is on the wrong side of your head.
He explained gently, but without warmth.
It is supposed to go on your face, not the back of your head.
The monster that took on the image of the child let out an unholy shriek and tried to stab the Halcyon. The captain was faster, and his blade sliced the little head in half. His comrade burned the body. Chapter 4. An unusual day at work. The village threw a small party to celebrate Rachel's arrival. While the main hall was being filled with food and drinks, and a few stragglers arriving late, Peter explained some things about the people living there, their customs, and a few tidbits about their strange beliefs. They wore simple, handmade clothes, and the girl felt itchy just looking at them. Good thing she brought her own stuff, she thought. The locals introduced themselves and told her what they did in the community. To Rachel's surprise, they were mostly farmers, artisans, and the like. Not a programmer or a business owner among them. This was when she truly understood just how far away she came from civilization as she knew it. The faces and names blurred together in Rachel's head. The community wasn't too large, but she hadn't met this many new faces since her freshman year. The elders of the village were wizened and looked older than their age, and frankly, they frightened the girl with their stern looks. The adults were a lot more amiable. They were happy to meet Peter's distant relative. The teens her age, their reactions were mixed. A girl with light brown hair looked at her with derision, while a dark-haired boy was much friendlier, often forgetting his gaze upon Rachel. There were a lot of kids too. Their games and laughter filled the spacious common room. Before dinner, the elders led the community in prayer, and the brunette girl sang afterwards. She had a beautiful voice, Rachel had to admit, and she also noticed how one of the elders was puffing her chest during the performance. The white-haired woman must have been her grandma, the new girl reasoned. The food was hearty and full of fat, but Rachel only picked out a few thin pieces of meat, worried the heavy meal would upset her stomach. She almost made a few comments, but remembering her father's warning, she decided to swallow those instead. The night came, but before the village retired to sleep, a long-bearded elder rose from his chair and said a few words.
May the Master accept this new soul into himself, and may he protect us from the unseen enemy. The Master provides.
The community repeated his words, while Rachel leaned close to Peter.
Hey, we already have antibiotics. You don't have to pray for that.
Peter smiled but shushed the girl, and the little celebration concluded. Rachel followed Peter to his home, a small house at the edge of the settlement, and he led her to her new room. It was much smaller than the one she had at home and lacked most amenities. Other than the bed, it had only a small wardrobe and a nightstand with a few books. Not much else, not even a mirror. The ugly cream carpet did not make it any more welcoming either. At least her stuff was already in the room, but she had no energy to unpack, so she just jumped face first into the bed. Sleep came for her quickly in the calm darkness, and she had a strange dream once again. She stood near Peter's house in the woods and noticed a familiar stranger. This time she did not see a monster, but a person who stood only 30 yards away, but the pale moonlight refused to illuminate his features. The form was dark. He looked more like a living shadow, rather than a mortal man. He invited Rachel to his side, offering her his hand to hold. Warmth radiated from the man, but the girl could sense something more: impatience. She stared at the shape, not moving closer, but not fleeing either, when suddenly a small blue and yellow silhouette struck down from the sky, attacking the figure. The man of shadows lashed out violently, but the little bird slipped away, and when the man left an opening, the bird plunged into his flesh with its long black beak, tearing out chunks of oily darkness and spitting it on the floor before going in for the next attack. Rachel stared at them and somehow knew neither side would give in. Their strange dance hastened. It turned ever more violent, and the air around them vibrated as if their fight shook the roots of the whole world.
Rachel, 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 come on, rise and shine.
Peter was shaking her awake. Rachel sprung up, adrenaline pulsing through her veins, and she looked at the man.
What?
She looked out the window. It was still dark, though the promise of daybreak already hung in the air.
What time is it? It's already past 5:30. I thought I would let you sleep in since it's your first day and all.
The cheeky bastard grinned at her. Rachel fell back on the pillow.
There is no such as 5:30 in the morning. You are lying to me. No such thing. Curious, I could have sworn you had once demolished a house this early in the morning. I wanted to ask for your help. We want to take down and rebuild the Roberts house, and they said it will take the whole month. Maybe you can show us amateurs how it's done, at least demolishing part.
Rachel frowned, and Peter stuck out his tongue at her.
Come on,
he said.
The earlier you get up, the sooner you'll get used to it.
Peter left the room, and Rachel sighed as she sat up. For a minute, she considered going back to sleep, but she remembered her father's words about complaints. So she crawled out of bed with a yawn. She noticed a hanger and an ugly brown dress on it, the same as the other girls wore in the village. Fat chance she would wear one of those, she thought to herself. Even looking at the damned thing made her itchy, so instead, she opened her case and took out a light green dress, something simple but elegant to put on. Peter was eating porridge in the kitchen, and he made a bowl for Rachel too. She tried the food but wasn't hungry this early morning, so she just rubbed her eyes and yawned again. Peter, on the other hand, he was stuffing himself like it was the best food on the whole planet. Maybe it was.
I don't think you want to wear that,
Peter said.
You need something more practical. There is no way I'm getting into that sack. It's made for potatoes.
Peter grinned under his nose and relented.
All right, you can decide.
He put his bowl into the sink and went to the cellar door. He pulled out a big rusty key and turned it in the lock.
You know, I won't steal your stuff,
Rachel said, taking a little offense.
You don't have to lock it.
Peter turned around, his face missing the usual jovial color. He leaned against the door and looked at the girl with somber seriousness.
The master's room is down in the cellar, like in every house. Promise me, you won't try to get in there. Oh, wow, I didn't know he lived here. From what you said, I expected him to have a somewhat more incorporeal place. Can I have a roomie? Rachel grinned. I mean it. You can't go in there before you are ready. Not before we know for sure he accepted you.
Peter was sincere. There was no joke waiting to burst out with a laugh, and Rachel's smile faded. She cleared her throat, thinking back to the night before. I thought you said the master welcomes everyone. He does. But you are not ready yet. Children aren't allowed in either. Promise me. Okay, I promise. I'm a big girl. You can tell me to stay out of the cellar. No need to make stuff up. And don't worry, I won't babble to the kids. Let them believe the master watches over them. From the cellar. The blonde girl joked, but realized deep down that the locals were very serious about their faith. Peter winked and went down to the cellar. His cousin tried to peek a little as he entered the door, but the stocky man was careful to block the view. His heavy steps made the old staircase creak in protest with every move. Then another door opened, and the house fell silent for a while. Peter soon returned. His boots were as audible upwards as they were downwards. He was smiling again. All right, let's get going, he said, clapping his hands. You sure you don't want to change your clothes? Rachel quickly realized her cousin wasn't just being nitpicky about dressing up when she stood knee-deep in straw. She had never milked a cow before, and touching the udder was a new experience, to put it mildly. The girls she worked with laughed at the faces she made, and the animal smelled so bad she almost threw up. Brunilla, the adult who oversaw the work, sent her out soon. Having had enough of the ruckus, Rachel sat down by the barn with a sigh, not believing what she had to endure. She was soon sent to the workshop, where she had to clean up the shavings and splinters after the workers. It was still tiring work, and she had to admit to herself that she found it humiliating, but at least the smell was far more tolerable. Still, she was itching all over from the dirt and sweat, was getting ravenously hungry, and Peter's occasional jokes did not help things one bit. She was elated when the adults finally called it a day. They returned to Peter's residence, and Rachel dashed to the bathroom. To her relief, it was fairly modern, though not as much hers back home, but it wasn't just a tub and rainwater. She set the faucet fully on the red option, opened it, and let the water rush over her. It took a moment until the dawning realization struck. There was no warm water. She cursed as she jumped out of the bathtub and resorted to cleaning herself with her hands. Peter later explained how to turn on the boiler. At dinner, she was finally allowed to sit with her peers, all of whom were mid to late teens. Rachel hoped for a friendly reception, but the brunette girl named Elena had different ideas.
Don't get used to this place, outsider. You won't last a week.
Some laughed at this, but the dark-haired lad interjected.
Come now, Lena. The master welcomes all who seek.
He invited Rachel to sit by him.
I'm Tom.
He introduced himself with a smile.
Rachel,
she replied.
We know the last night was all about you, outsider.
It was clear that Elena would not warm up to Rachel anytime soon, and judging by the giggles all around, she had to take Elena down a peg before the rest accepted her. Rachel smiled to herself as the elders silenced the room and ordered the children to sit. It was something she could handle with ease. Chapter 5. Water and Fire. The Halcyons stood in the pouring rain, stone-faced and empty-eyed. They studied the creatures in front of them. The aliens were once part of an amphibian species, but now they were nothing more than shambling monstrosities of flesh, fused together with other members of their kin. Each of the horrors had more eyes than such an amphibian should have. They all scanned the grimy landscape, and yet they did not notice the Halcyons waltzing up to their noses. The captain moved closer to one of the creatures and examined it almost curiously. He could see where the bodies of the amphibians were mutilated, and he saw where their bones and joints blended together. He leaned close, so close that a sudden attack from the creature would have found him defenseless. But the captain knew it wouldn't move unprompted. He was soon satisfied with his findings. They arrived in time. He made a sign, and the dark-clad warriors struck down the creatures, their axes and machetes heaving fast and without mercy, spilling black bile and guts on the sodden ground. It was difficult to burn the bodies in the deluge, but they found a way like they always had. The white phosphorus shined brightly. Their job that day had a few extra challenges. Not only did the heavy rain render their flamethrowers near useless, but their main target, a massive granite complex, was mostly underwater, well suited for amphibians, but rather unwelcoming for humans. Close air support attacked from the skies, and rockets cracked open the structure. Malformed creatures and water poured out from the opening, but the Halcyons were ready. Their guns worked without pause, though they had little effect. Even if one of the creatures were felled by the flurry of bullets, it soon rose again, reanimated by the vile intelligence behind it all. The Halcyons baited their enemies to a well-prepared area. A chain of explosions lit up the storm-dark landscape, and the creatures were torn to shreds. The Halcyons stormed the building. They dispatched the remaining guards and searched for the heart of darkness. They traversed the alien geometries with skill, and even when the laws of nature abandoned them in the depths of that dark pyramid, they pressed on. The fetid ground twisted before their eyes, and they had to take good care to avoid the parts where flesh fused with granite, and to always step on stone, as if they were playing a most foul version of the floor is lava. A sudden shift caught one of the Halcyons in a fleshy trap. His right leg was stuck in a pocket of tendons and muscle, stopping him in his tracks. The captain swung his axe after a glance. The steel bit the warrior just above the knee. The hole swallowed the severed appendage, adding the matter to its horrid structure. The maimed warrior did not cry out. He didn't even yelp. His empty eyes betrayed no emotion. A white substance poured out from where his uniform was shredded, and it swiftly closed up the wound, stopping the bleeding. The medic pulled out a small metal rod from his utility belt, pressed a button, and the metal obediently transformed into a full-fledged prosthetic leg. He attached it to the warrior's stump, and the pair soon rejoined the pursuit. They found their target in a deep crevasse. The pure hatred and malice radiating from that hole was enough to drive a living soul to slavering insanity. The Halcyons did not flinch. The captain armed a large explosive device. He walked through the damp ceiling and was ready to toss it to the deep, when a limping tendril caught his arm. It pressed him against the bile-soaked wall, preventing him from casting down the bomb. He did not hesitate. He pulled out his knife and struck at his arm, just below the shoulder. The first strike bit through the flesh and stopped in the bone. The second cut through the bone and left only a small tether of tendon and skin on the other side. The third blow severed the rest. The arm and the bomb fell upon the horror below. The captain did not blink. It was but a mundane task for his kind. The explosion did not destroy the creature, but it gave an opening to the warriors. Their deeds would remain unsung, as they always have been, as they always will be. It was the way it had to be. But the Halcyons did not mind, for they did not seek glory, unlike their livelier-colored cousins. Their war was different. Chapter 6, Lose a Rival, Win a Friend. Rachel woke up from her slumber, her nightgown damp from all the sweat. She dreamed again. It was the same movie she had seen every night since her arrival. The shadowy figure and the little bird and their brutal and violent battle. She was only half awake, still afraid the whole world was breaking under the struggle.
Rise and shine. It's already you are awake.
Peter's red grinning face appeared in the door. His smile faded and he walked up to Rachel, crouching down by her bed.
Are you all right? You look sick.
He felt up her forehead with his right hand.
Feverish even. All right, you stay in bed. I will have Mr. Tespus check up on you. No need.
Rachel protested.
I'm fine. Just a nightmare.
She quickly got out of bed.
Are you sure, Ray? I don't want to insult you, because I'm scared of you.
He winked.
But you look positively ill. A day of rest could help. I'm fine, Peter. Thank you. Just nightmares. Nightmares, as in plural?
Peter asked with an eyebrow raised. Rachel cursed herself for the mistake.
Look, it's normal after interstellar travel. Something with the ITER drive, I think. Yeah, I traveled a lot before. It shouldn't last weeks,
Peter said while squinting at his cousin.
What did you see? A man? It looked more like a shadow, really.
Rachel sighed.
The Master? The Master revealed himself to you. That's a good thing. You shouldn't be scared.
Peter laughed with relief.
He may be daunting at first, but don't be afraid. Have you felt the warmth too? Well, yeah, I guess, but I really don't want to discuss religion first thing in the morning. Now let me dress.
Peter laughed and left the room to make breakfast. Fearing the Master, how silly. Rachel sighed as her cousin left. She was glad she said nothing of the little avian. A few days ago she borrowed an atlas about birds, adamant to find the belligerent blue and yellow fowl. But it had to wait, for it was time to get to work. Thankfully, her station was no longer in the workshop. The adults realized she clicked very well with the kids, so they assigned her to the school together with Elena, much to the chagrin of the latter. Educational duties were reserved for the most pious of the village. It was a privilege, and she was always the first to volunteer when the elders needed something in service of the Master. And now she had to share with the uppity outsider. Rachel, however, just enjoyed teaching no matter the subject, and the children loved her. Even Elena was tolerable during these times, acting gracious in the open and holding back on the meaner comments, save for the occasional jabs. The other teens slowly forgot their grudges against the outsider. As the weeks went by, some even became her friends. And Elena could barely contain her jealousy. Her comments were less and less appreciated. Rachel suspected her charming personality wasn't the sole reason for the shift in opinions. Tom also made some groundwork. The boy made every excuse under the sun to be around her, but for the time being, it was Peter who readily exploited the opportunity. His house was never cleaner, and his pantry was tidily organized, not to mention the neatly trimmed hedges. Afternoon, they all left for the orchard to pick fruits. The kids could barely contain themselves and rushed forward, ignoring Elena's admonishments. Rachel looked after them with a smile.
They are really eager to work. Are we this boring? It's because of the festivities,
Elena explained.
The what?
Rachel was perplexed. She knew some event was coming, but she wasn't too keen to learn more about it before. School celebrations tended to be dull affairs.
The ripening. We thank the master for all he provides.
Elena's mouth turned into a frown. She tried to make it look like a reassuring smile, but lying wasn't the youngster's forte.
Speaking of which, do you want to be my peach pear? What is that?
Rachel stopped and stared at Elena, looking for signs of trickery. Meanwhile, Elena tried to make her smile friendlier, more encouraging. It scarcely worked.
We will play games. Come on, we have to bury the hatchet one day.
Her smile was entirely dishonest. The girl was a terrible liar, and Rachel could see it from a mile away. But she decided, play along.
All right, let's bury the hatchet.
Rachel's smile, on the other hand, seemed completely genuine. A good liar lies with the eyes. The girls helped the kids carry the fruits back to the main square, and they went to the tea house to get their costumes. The cozy living room, with its ugly decorations, still held a strong chamomile scent from earlier that day. Peter aided the youngsters. He handed out the colorful costumes to the kids, and he also dropped along a jokey remark with each. The smaller ones laughed, but the teens just rolled their eyes at him, which he enjoyed as much as the laughter. When Rachel and Elena reached him, Peter stopped for a moment, finding this brand new friendship highly suspect.
And you too?
He asked, raising an eyebrow.
We are the peach pears.
Elena blurted out with enthusiasm.
All right, here's your peach.
He handed an ugly yellow costume to Lena.
Do you mind if I talk to my cousin for a moment?
He asked, but did not wait for the answer, and pulled Rachel away.
Do you know what game you are going to play?
He asked.
A fairground game you guys spiced up a bit. Or peached up.
She shrugged.
I hoped you two made up.
Peter sighed.
You will sit above a huge bowl of, guess what, peaches, on a tight board, like this.
He knocked on the wall.
Lena, the same. And you will have to hit a small lever to drop the other down into the bowl. Whoever gives up first loses. Peter, are you using our butts to make jam? I know you have a sweet tooth, but it's extreme even for you.
Rachel said with pretend indignation.
Don't be so full of yourself. You're just going to pulp it up a bit. Well, not you. I'm pulling you out of the game. No need, cuz. It will be fun.
Rachel protested.
Look, Lena is good at this, and I don't want her to humiliate you. She has won this game 3 years in a row. Wow, she plays this game once every year. I'm scared.
Rachel laughed.
Besides, I really have to make her rethink her cattiness, and without ending up in the principal's office, my dad wouldn't be happy. I'm sure you won't find it funny when you are covered in fruit from head to toe. Please don't make this about your pride. I will talk to her later. Seriously, 3 years in a row,
Peter said as he put away the other yellow costume into a drawer.
Cuz, I played handball for 10 years.
She waited for her words to hit her cousin. He straightened up, slowly pulled the dress back out, and handed it to Rachel with a grin.
All right, Ray, but don't be too rough. No promises.
Rachel smiled as she put on the ugly yellow thing over her brown dress. It wasn't that itchy after all. The whole community gathered in the middle of the village. The square was filled with talking and laughter. The sweet smell of flowers and fruits surrounded them, and the long tables covered with red and white patched tablecloths were crumbling under the weight of food and pastries. As the sun began to vanish, behind the horizon torches were lit, and the games began. The kids started their races, while the adults cheered on from the tables and filled their bellies with snacks. There were 2 teams, red and blue to keep it simple, and it was a tight race. As is usual, the parents cared more about the points than the kids themselves, and sometimes the elders had to step in to calm their tempers. Chief among them was white-haired Moret, who liked to wave her bony finger at the offenders while sharing an earful with them about behaving. Team Blue had a small lid when the time had come for Rachel's race. She tied a small red armband on her and climbed up the ladder to her perch. It wasn't too high up from the ground. Nobody wanted to risk a serious injury. Elena did the same. The native girl was far more confident, and she eagerly sat at the edge of the board above the big bowl of fruits.
Hurry up, friend. We don't have all night.
She goaded Rachel. Rachel carefully crawled to the front and looked for the lever that would drop her rival below. 5, maybe 6 yards at most, she counted. Child's play. Below them were 2 pool-sized vessels, both filled to the brim with already pitted soft fruits. The outworlder could choose between going first, since Team Red was behind, or going second, but with a chance for double the points. She, of course, chose the latter. Elena grinned ear to ear. She took aim, even squinting an eye to properly measure the distance, and let the peach fly. It hit a bough above the lever, and a good quarter of the exploding fruit landed on Rachel's head.
Not bad. It was really close.
Rachel lauded her rival's throw while wiping away the soft pulp from her hair.
You say?
Really?
Really often, you know that?
Elena mocked.
Really?
Rachel answered with a grin. She aimed carefully and hit the lever on the first attempt. Lena fell screaming into the pool of peaches. The girl crawled out fast and angry, pulping the goods as she went. They repeated it 3 times, and Elena was smeared head to toe in an ever-growing paint of ripe fruit. But it was the laughter all around that truly hurt her. She ran away sobbing after her 4th fall. Rachel enjoyed the cheers and the lauding of her team, but soon her conscience got the better of her. She slipped away and went after Elena. It wasn't hard to follow her footsteps. The orange patches staining the grass gave far more insight into the matter than breadcrumbs would have. Rachel found her rival at the barn huddled against the red wall, sitting in the dirt. Her face was red and puffy from all the tears, and she did not notice Rachel at first.
Are you all right?
Rachel knew it was a stupid question, but she wasn't sure how to start. Elena's head shot up, and she threw a peach in her direction, missing her target by a good yard.
Go away. What else do you want from me?
She screamed.
I hate you. I hate that you are here, and I hate peaches.
Lena got up, and she emphasized her feelings by throwing more fruits at Rachel, who waited out the rain behind the open barn door.
I didn't realize I upset you this much,
she admitted.
I am not upset. You are just an outsider. Go away. I will. You know I came only for a few months.
Rachel peeked out and saw that Elena was on the ground again, with her arms wrapped around her legs, resting her face on her knees. Rachel walked up to her.
Seriously, I will go home next month. Only 7 weeks. I don't care.
Elena answered, her voice completely deflated.
I will, really.
Elena looked up at her rival and shook her head.
No, you won't. Nobody does. What do you mean?
Rachel looked at her, puzzled.
People just like it here. Mr. Roberts was an inspector sent to investigate us, and even he settled down here. And people love you much better than me anyway. Maybe I should go to the master instead.
Elena's voice cracked with those last words. Rachel almost burst out laughing, but stopped herself at the last second. Poor Elena was so insecure, she thought, as she knelt beside her, hugging her tightly.
Let go of me, or I will hit you.
The native girl threatened, but she did not pull away.
Let's face it, you are really not good at hitting me today.
Rachel joked and refused to let go.
I'm just a curiosity, just a visitor passing by. Of course people find me interesting. They will forget my name soon after I leave, but you will always be their Lena.
She held the local girl until her sobs stopped.
Do you seriously hate peaches?
She asked, after Lena calmed down a bit.
Yeah, they are just gross. The big ones that make a huge mess, I'm fine with the little yellows. We should call them something else.
She wiped her eyes, completely forgetting they were called apricots. Rachel eyed up the few remaining buckets of ripe reddish crops. Most were already pooled into the common foodstuffs or handed out to families, but some stragglers remained. She grabbed 2 and instructed Lena to do the same. The girls entered the barn, and Rachel had almost spilled the contents of her first bucket to the pigs when Elena stopped her.
What are you doing?
She demanded in a hushed voice.
Saving you from the peaches.
She winked.
Come on, everyone else is feasting, and the animals are having their usual feed. It's not fair. They should celebrate the ripening too.
And with that, she poured out the first bucket to the pigs. Lena's eyes widened, and the brunette girl covered her mouth. Rachel waved her to help, and after a moment of hesitation, she joined with a guilty smile. They poured out the contents of the second one together.
Okay, let's feed the others too. Where is Polly?
Rachel searched for her favorite woolly friend.
The master called her to himself.
Lena explained. The blonde girl was taken aback by her casual tone.
It's an honor.
She continued.
My parents were called too. Oh.
Rachel understood now, or at least she thought she did, and rubbed Lena's shoulder.
So that's why you live with Marate. She's your grandma, right? Yes. She was chosen as elder after my parents were called.
The Outworlder youth made a sympathetic frown. The locals were very serious about their faith, so she usually refrained from making remarks, especially in such somber matters. They spread out the rest of the fruits among the animals: sheep, goats, cows, even the chickens got a taste. After they finished, they snuck back to the party, packed up food and drinks, and returned to the barn to talk. At first, it was just casual chit-chat, gossip about the community, and the like, but soon Lena began to bombard her new friend with questions about her homeworld. The native girl was curious about every detail, and Rachel described many of the tools and objects of modern life, things that were mundane for her, but miraculous for Alina, who often made incredulous grins, unsure if the other girl was just messing with her. She concentrated so much on the explanations that even her nose started to bleed a little. She had to stop it with a towel. Later on, Lena opened up about the loss of her parents and how much she missed them, while Rachel detailed how she ended up at the Little Moon. And after a bit of vacillation, she also talked about her strange dreams. Her new friend found those curious, but after a bit of hesitation, she assured Rachel that the master would accept her. She wanted to say something else about the master, but her nose started to bleed again, stopping her attempt. They continued on with lighter topics, and only after the break of dawn did they leave for home. It was fine. The main square still held a good handful of stragglers, who enjoyed their drinks a little too much.